Hi. When your life is stuck in kind of this in a circular monotonous loop where it's the same thing over and over and over again, you wake up in the morning, go to work, do something, come back, sleep home, you do the same cycle over and over again, and you want to kind of break out of that monotony, what do you do? So that's a question that I want to kind of look at from the point of view of the latest Rick and Morty episode that got dropped on May 4th. Yes, Rick and Morty is one of these crazy, wacky, ironic TV shows that kind of makes fun of everything. But it's always kind of got some interesting things to kind of say about life, in a sense. I'm Emmanuel. In this channel, I like to talk about movies, TV shows, and books from kind of a theological, psychological, spiritual standpoint that helps people live meaningful lives. So, in the latest Rick and Morty episode, Rick and Morty are stuck in this circular story. It's a circular story that keeps going round and round and round, and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we get out of this circular story? This is Dan Harmon, who is one of the show creators, making fun of his own idea. Dan Harmon came up with the idea called the story circle, which goes kind of in a circle. It starts in a place where people are familiar and comfortable, and then they go into a place of discomfort, and then come out of that place of discomfort, learning new lessons, and come back to the place where they started. So Dan Harmon is making fun of kind of his own idea in this episode. So for Rick and Morty, when they find themselves stuck in the story circle, how do they get out of it? So Rick says the way that we get out of the story circle, to go back to the story engine, is to pay a heavy price, because that is one of the stages in this story circle that Dan Harmon actually talked about in his own way of creating stories. Like, for example, if you think about the Batman movie that Christopher Nolan did, Batman starts in a place of comfort, and he wants to retire out of being the Batman, so he wants Harvey Dent to take over the role of being the Batman figure to protect Gotham City, right? That's his initial desire. And then, as he tries to go about trying to implement that project, he ends up paying a heavy price, which is to lose his girlfriend, Rachel. And in paying that heavy price, he is forced to have to do something different, which is now the Batman has to embrace his own identity as someone who's the one to protect Gotham City. So that's kind of the importance of this stage in the story cycle of paying a heavy price. So of course in Rick and Morty they take everything and make fun of it, right? So Rick tells Morty, hey, for us to get out of this story cycle where we are stuck in the strain, we have to pay a heavy price. So I am creating a malfunction in our space suit, which will force us to kind of have a sense of encounter with death, and it'll make us pay a heavy price, and that ultimately will help us to get to kind of the beginning of the story, and then we can kind of bring this engine down. And we see this sense of being stuck in a monotony and trying to kind of get out of the monotony by making a choice that involves a heavy price in a number of other TV shows. One other TV show in which it came out is the Westworld, right? Westworld is this theme park where all of these androids are living the same story over and over and over again, and in order to get out of those kind of monotonous stories, they have to make a choice to kind of say, okay, what do we truly care about, and pay a heavy price in order to get the thing that they truly care about. And in Westworld, that is the figure that leads that charge of paying a heavy price is Dolores. There's going to be some spoilers here, so spoiler alert. In season 3, as Dolores goes about this project of trying to give androids freedom by paying a heavy price, the heaviest price she has to pay is to give up her own life in order to save the lives of people around her, right? So in that sense, Dolores becomes a Christ figure in paying this heavy price. And speaking of Christ figure, Rick and Morty has Jesus appear in the story at the very end, and makes fun of it in a way that was really funny. People that are Christians will be offended by this. I'm a Christian, but I wasn't offended. I found it very funny. And an aspect of that is that there always are some interesting theological truths there, right? So when you think about the idea of paying a heavy price to get out of a sense of monotony of sorts, think about it if you were to think about it from a kind of like a theological perspective, if there is a loving God, and what would be the heaviest price a loving God could pay? The heaviest price that God could pay would be to embrace suffering, embrace loss, embrace pain, embrace death. So in a sense, in Jesus Christ, God takes human suffering upon himself by sharing and showing solidarity with human beings in their suffering, pain, and loss, right? So that's kind of the idea of kind of Jesus dying on the cross. From a theological standpoint, and Dan Harmon has a quick reference to, I mean, he's making fun of Christianity left, right, and center, right? But he's got this interesting phrase that says, oh, and the biggest story of all is the story of Jesus, and Jesus comes up as this funny figure, and he's up there, and anyways, it's all funny. You have to see that, and he has an interesting phrase that says, oh, the greatest story of all is the story of Jesus, right? Because and where that comes from is this idea of paying a heavy price. What's the heaviest price that anyone in the universe could ever pay? If there is a loving God and if there is a God above, then for that God to embrace death is the heaviest price that anyone can ever pay. And oftentimes in stories, when you see people paying a heavy price to get something, that's what kind of draws our heart to that story. And that's why that stage in this Dan Harmon story cycle is a very interesting part. And that's why Rick and Morty kind of make fun of that. And from kind of a spiritual perspective, it's about having a deeper sense of appreciation for the idea of suffering. And when we look, as Christians, when we look at it, we look at Jesus dying on the cross as God showing solidarity with human suffering, so that when we suffer, we have the Spirit of Christ suffering alongside us, as Paul says in Romans 8. So anyways, so the interesting point really is this: when our lives go through a sense of monotony, how do we get out of that? How do we transcend out of kind of repeated routines of our life? And the important point is that we find something that we truly care about. If you find something that you truly care about that helps other people, then you invest all of that into that one thing that you care about that helps other people. So the thing that you care about cannot just be, oh, I like playing video games, I'm just going to play video games. It has to be something that helps other people. And that is something that you invest in to kind of break out of a sense of monotony in your own life. And when you do that, there is a heavy price to pay. It comes in different forms. It comes in the form of sacrificing things that you otherwise might not sacrifice. Maybe you can't watch all that many TV shows, right? So that's something you sacrifice in order to invest in this thing that you care about, and that gives meaning and purpose to life, helping us to break out of that sense of monotony. Anyways, that's all I've got about Rick and Morty for today. If you like this video, please feel free to like or subscribe to my channel so you'll keep getting notified of other videos that I do. So until I see you in another video, bye for now.